Across the South Coast, live from Solent University. You're listening to Solent Sports News.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Adam Cylinder with your Solent Sports News headlines. In rugby, England captain Owen Farrell has been replaced by Marcus Smith for Saturday's Six Nations match against France at Twickenham. Smith has been handed the responsibility despite being sparse to use against Italy and Wales. Rugby specialist Sebastian Pratt is not sure about the decision.
Starting Marcus Smith over Farrell, I don't personally think it's the right decision, but I think Steve Borthwick's just really trying to find a new fly-half 9 partnership because, well, Farrell, whether he's not been up to par at the moment, but I don't think Smith is a person to replace him. Admittedly, he has some pretty unreal games in the Premiership with that extra win at Twickenham the other day. He looks unbelievable, but this is going up against sides who aren't nearly as physical sometimes, and then especially putting him in 10 for the France game, who well known for having their big runners. I don't think Smith has the defensive capabilities to put up with that.
In football, Paul Pogba has been left out of the Juventus squad for tonight's Europa League clash against Freiburg. This comes as disciplinary punishment for turning up late to yesterday's training session. The French midfielder has made 2 appearances after returning from his knee injury. Tottenham's hopes for a trophy this season have ended, and Antonio Conte's position is in serious doubt. A disappointing performance against AC Milan saw them exit the Champions League. According to reports, players and coaches at the club are pleading Mauricio Pochettino to return to the club. Our reporter Ben Hayward is at the stadium looking into the situation around the club.
I've just made it to the north-east side of central London and I'm currently outside of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the first time. It's very cloudy, it's dull, it's pretty lifeless, and that's exactly how you describe Tottenham's performance in the Champions League last night. Of course, they crashed out to AC Milan on the night, 1-0 on aggregate, and they didn't really test the visitors really, apart from that late Harry Kane header, which was well dealt with by Mike Maignan. But it's been poor in recent weeks from Tottenham overall in all competitions, and fans are starting to come for manager Antonio Conte's head. So we spoke to journalists and fans earlier on today to get their opinion on the state of their club at the moment and what needs to be done in the future to end this trophy drought for Tottenham.
Tottenham Hotspur have won their first major trophy for 9 years. Jonathan Woodgate, the hero, his goal in the first seconds of extra time has beaten Chelsea.
In 2008, the price of a pint was £2.60. Apple released the iPhone 3G. In Beijing, Usain Bolt won his first Olympic gold medals, and this song was top of the charts.
You got me begging you for mercy. Why won't you release me? You got me begging you for mercy. Why won't you release me?
But now it's Spurs fans who find themselves begging for mercy, because it's also the last time Tottenham won a major trophy. Since then, Spurs have been in 3 finals, losing all of them, and also dumping 7 managers in the process, with last night's result going in favour of AC Milan and kicking Tottenham out of the Champions League.
Tottenham out of Europe, and it has to be said, with a whimper tonight.
Some believe that they're at risk of losing an 8th.
I think Conte needs to go.
That was Alex Mitten, Tottenham writer for Vavel, who is one of many that thinks Antonio Conte should be sacked with the Italian's job on the line.
His tactics are outdated, it's not really working, he's not getting the best out of the players.
The Spurs Show podcast host and Tottenham fan Mike Lee is also one to think that Conte's days are numbered at the club.
Fans are happy to go out of competitions if they see some effort, see some energy, tactics, but again, really lacking, and it really feels like Conte has lost the belief in the dressing room. The fact that Conte said after the game that there's been little improvement in the team this season pretty much says what we know, that he will go at the end of the season. He might go before the end of the season. There's only a couple of months to pay him off now when his contract runs out in June, but certainly he'll be off.
It's not just Tottenham fans who think the time has come, but football fans in general.
I think the biggest loss Tottenham have had is the loss of their manager. I think it's given the players absolutely no hope, and they've been useless as a result.
It's just the same. You're seeing the same patterns as previous managers, and I just don't think that Spurs will ever change until they start going for things instead of just being that sit-back team.
Currently, the manager's out ill, had surgery. There's no real first-team manager to take place.
Now, we've heard the opinions of Tottenham fans and journalists, but what does the man in question, Antonio Conte, think?
We cannot invent the win or to hope in one miracle one day that a trophy go into our training ground or into our pitch. We have to build. We have to build and to have patience.
So, trophies don't appear overnight and the club needs time to build, is the message from the gaffer. But perhaps Conte isn't the only person to blame for the lack of silverware.
Hi, this is Matt Dunn, a sports reporter for the Daily Express. I think it needs a new manager, one with a lot of energy, and dare I say it, perhaps a new philosophy, and one that perhaps doesn't involve Harry Kane.
With Conte looking like he's not going to be the right man to take Tottenham back to success, who will bring the glory back to White Hart Lane?
Thank you for the insight, Ben. Next up, the issue of gambling in sports is becoming a big talking point. The notable case of Ivan Toney is far from the only one. Our reporter Evan Clem has investigated the impact it can have.
Significant breaking news. You will be aware that Ivan Toney has been assisting the FA over alleged gambling offences. Well, I can tell you now, the Brentford striker Ivan Toney has been charged by the FA with misconduct in relation to alleged breaches of the FA's betting rules.
Betting in sport, a problem which has not only become synonymous with the fans, but the stars of the game as well. Ivan Toney is football's latest offender with 262 charges against his name, spanning back many years. However, he is not the only athlete to be entangled in one of the darkest sporting scandals.
I mean, I was getting up in the morning betting on, up the top of my head, Lithuanian under-20 basketball matches.
That was the voice of ex-Arsenal player Paul Merson, who has struggled with addiction to drugs, alcohol and betting since his playing days. However, the 54-year-old believes that there are some key differences between the three, with betting being the most difficult to overcome.
Gambling, you don't have to put anything into you. You don't have to put it in. It's there, It's just a weird feeling, and when it gets hold of you, it just grips you. It's not just it's the people around you as well. You're just constantly looking at your phone, and it's just draining. That's the hardest thing.
Ball of the batting power play. And out goes Ricky Clark. Fantastic work by Chris Wood, and the Hampshire Royals are the favourites now.
It's not only football's elite that are being affected though, as the issue is rife amongst cricket players as well. Hampshire bowler Chris Wood not only battled his own problems with gambling throughout his years at the club, but has seen it become more popular in the dressing room among teammates.
I think the answer is high, and to all different levels. You often get conversations during the changing room. I've put a tenner on this football accumulator or whatever, and because I've been at, Hampshire for a long time, you get to know people, don't you, and you understand. And I'd say probably in our dressing room, I'd say 90% of people will bet to some extent.
Away from the professionals, the problem can engulf the lives of fans even more so, with many looking to win big in the hopes of a better life. None more so than Patrick Foster, who decided to bet every penny he had on a horse race in 2018, in which the outcome could have been catastrophic.
I decided to put it all on one bet, one horse in one horse race, the Cheltenham Gold Cup in March 2018. And if that horse won, I would have won that money back. I had the intention to pay everybody back. If it didn't win, it had literally become a matter of life and death, and I was going to go and kill myself.
Matters became worse when his horse only lost by a few lengths and his ability to pay back the money he owed vanished. After years of rehab, he finally managed to curb his addiction. However, he admitted that it is something that he will never fully recover from. He is not the first and certainly won't be the last person who will know the devastating effects of gambling within sport if measures are not put in place to combat it.
Thank you for that, Evan. Now back to North London. A new deal is yet to be agreed with Arsenal forward Bukayo Saka, whose contract expires next year. Saka's teammate Gabriel Martinelli is hopeful the English international will prolong his stay at the Emirates.
I'll be happy because He's a very, very good player, one of the best young players in the world. And he's at his house, Arsenal is his home, and for sure he's happy, and we will be happy as well if he stays and sign a new deal.
Arsenal are today in action as European football continues, and we are joined by our reporter Dylan Shabazz. Hello Dylan, so tell us which English teams are in action tonight.
Okay, thanks Adam. Let's start in M16. Manchester United are at home to Real Betis. Obviously Manchester United looking to bounce back from last weekend's freak result in the Liverpool game. Obviously they lost that 7-0. And now they face off against Real Betis, Spanish side in good form this season, actually held 35 times Spanish champions Real Madrid to a 0-0 draw last weekend. And then with short hop from Manchester to Lisbon, Arsenal are the visitors to Sporting Lisbon. The main story there is Hector Bellerin, of course, facing off against his old side following a disappointing 6-month stint in Barcelona. And in the UEFA Europa Conference League, West Ham are in Cyprus preparing to face AEK Larnaca. And I've seen lots of footage of West Ham fans out there enjoying themselves in the Cypriot sunshine, Adam.
I bet they are. Any other English players left in the Europa League we should be looking out for?
Yeah, of course. There's actually 6 English players involved across 4 games. The ex-Manchester United, Fulham and Maidstone defender Chris Smalling, and Chelsea, Bristol City and Swansea City, amongst others, striker Tammy Abraham, are at home as Roma face Real Sociedad. And obviously a South Coast link here. Ex-Portsmouth defender Christian Burgess and ex-Accrington defender Ross Sykes are playing for Union Saint-Gilloise away against Union Berlin. The Belgian side there obviously actually twinned with Brighton and Hove Albion. They got the same owner. Really interesting story in Lisbon, actually. Ex-Spurs Academy starlet Marcus Edwards, who was let go by the North London club in 2019, comes up against Spurs' arch-rivals Arsenal and will be looking to make a similar impact in the games that he had against Spurs earlier in this season's Champions League, where I believe he actually scored in both. And finally, ex-Chelsea youth player and self-professed Arsenal fan, Juventus player Samuel Eiling Jr. May feature in their game against Freiburg later on this evening. So yeah, all 6 of those names to look out for if you're interested in English players performing on the continent.
Any other ties that caught your eye this evening?
Yeah, of course. There's always some interesting matchups at this stage of European competition. So what I've done is I've sort of zoomed in on one from the Europa League and one from the Conference League. In the Europa League, I've gone for Shakhtar Donetsk versus Feyenoord. Shakhtar, actually, Ukrainian side, well known to many. I'm sure Chelsea fans will know that's where they signed Mikhailo Mudryk for in January. But they won 7-0 at the weekend versus Metalist Kharkiv. That scoreline may bring back some haunting memories for Manchester United fans, and are actually second in their league at the moment. Feyenoord as well are in great form, are top of the Eredivisie and haven't lost a game in any competition since October the 27th, which was ironically in the group stages of the Europa League to Austrian outfit Sturm Graz. Some of their players to look out for include Mexican attacker Santiago Jimenez. He's got 4 goals in his last 6 games, as well as Turkish midfielder Orkun Kokcu, who's been in great form and is on the radar of many top European clubs this summer. And then in the Conference League, it's actually quite an intriguing tie. I've gone for Sheriff Tiraspol versus Nice. I think this one is actually more intriguing in the sense of the 2 sides clashing and the stories behind the sides, rather than the potential prospect of the tie, if that makes sense. So Sheriff Tiraspol, for those who don't know, are based in a breakaway state of Moldova named Transnistria. And they're owned by Sheriff, the company, who are actually the second largest company in the region. And in Transnistria, they own things such as petrol stations, supermarkets, and other such things like a mobile phone network. They actually this season won the first stage of the Moldovan National League rather easily, and they're about to commence with the second stage of the league. They've got a similar league format to Scotland, if that makes sense. You know how the top 6 then go on to commence into a different stage and the bottom 6 go into a different half. And Nice actually is 7th in League One. They've got a very interesting squad. It's comprised of sort of Premier League old heads, such as Kasper Schmeichel, Ross Barkley, and Fulham defender Joe Bryan is currently on loan there as well. And Saints' January target, Terem Moffi, as someone they looked at in January, he actually joined Nice in January. They haven't lost since January the 7th, when they were dumped out of the French Cup by second division side Le Puy. So I think that's a really interesting time, one that definitely sort of grabbed my attention when I looked at it. I'm really interested to see what will happen in both of those games this evening.
It's definitely a very, very large abundance of great matches today. Thank you very much for that, Dylan. We'll continue on now with the story about FIFPro have put out a report today saying that holding another Winter World Cup would be unacceptable, and stating that players have only had 8 days of recovery compared to the usual 37 due to the European League forcing them to fit in the calendar. Another Winter World Cup could be held in 2030, as Saudi Arabia are one of the candidates. And in more local news, former Portsmouth and Southampton players will play a charity match in memory of John Gittins. Gittins, who played for both rival clubs, passed away from cancer in May 2019, aged 55. Southampton forward Kamaldeen Sulemana has revealed he had conversations with Mohamed Salisu before signing. The pair played together at the 2022 Qatar World Cup. Despite this, Sulemana insisted he made a decision to join himself. Former Reading veteran Chris Gunter has today announced his retirement from the Welsh national team. The 33-year-old holds the record for most Wales appearances, having stepped on the pitch on 109 occasions. To Fratton Park now, Portsmouth winger Ronan Curtis will see a specialist today. Curtis suffered an ACL injury in Portsmouth's 3-1 victory against Bolton on Tuesday night. Exeter City footballer Giovanni Brown has had his court case adjourned. Brown was charged with assaulting a woman last month. The midfielder was originally due in court today, but the date has been changed to the 23rd of March. Over to women's football now, Chelsea manager Emma Hayes has called for more support for players returning from pregnancy. Midfielder Melanie Loopballs made her first start last night since returning from maternity leave.
If a player tears her ACL, you do everything possible to get them back on the pitch, 9 to 12 months. We should be exactly the same with a woman who gets pregnant and has a baby, but we don't. And I think we have to ask ourselves more seriously why that is.
Corinne Diacre has been sacked as manager of the French national team 4 months before the World Cup. This comes after several players, including captain Wendy Renard, boycotted the management and system in place. In cricket, England have lost by 6 wickets to Bangladesh in their first match of the T20I series this morning. Bangladesh got ahead of the rate early and were comfortable until the end. England captain Josh Buttler was the only batter to get his half-century.
We couldn't manage to get away, and we were probably 20 short of where we'd like to be with our score, and I think that meant we chased it a little bit in the field.
Tennis now. Emma Raducanu has revealed her wrist injury has resurfaced ahead of today's match at Indian Wells. The 20-year-old has only been able to play 4 matches this season, and she is hopeful of playing through the pain. Wimbledon is set to lift its ban on Russian and Belarusian players. It was the only major tournament to take such measure last year. The athletes will be allowed to play under a neutral flag unless they show support to Putin and his war. In boxing, Jake Paul and Floyd Mayweather clashed last night in Miami. In a video clip that surfaced online, Mayweather confronted Paul with his entourage. Both parties were in attendance for the Miami Heat basketball game. The clash comes ahead of rumors that the pair will face off in a boxing match later in the year. In local news, Bound Palace remain undefeated at professional level. Valentino Marcu and Grazian Bag both won in Bournemouth last Friday night. This was Marcu's professional debut and Bag's second outing. Our boxing correspondent Jack Paskett has more on the story.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, it was another successful night for pound. Both fighters were led by the gym owner, Steve Barnes, that he was both in their corner. At another event held by ex-professional boxer Steve Bendal at the O2 Academy in Bournemouth, the debutant Marcu was supposed to fight at the back end of last year, but unfortunately his licence didn't clear in time. This time, for this event, he was cleared and he faced up against Reece Taylor. His counterpart back faced Justin Menzie. This was his second fight at professional level after beating Chris Adaway last time around. Both fighters won last weekend by unanimous decision, And now the pair will be looking to step in the ring again within the next couple of months at an event in Southampton at the Guildhall, where they could be joined by fellow gym goer Mitchell Willard as he looks to fight for the second time. The wins are really putting the Palace on the map, especially in the city, becoming the dominant gym. And for the city of Southampton itself, boxing's getting back on the map where it was long ago.
Thank you very much for that, Jack. Certainly been hearing about Bath a lot lately. It will be interesting to look at their progress over time. In more news, Gareth Thomas is part of a new awareness campaign in order to change perceptions on HIV. The former rugby union and rugby league player revealed in 2019 that he was HIV positive. Due to the stigma around HIV, many more are predicted to die if the situation is not addressed.
And it's based mainly around HIV awareness and the stigma that's kind of created in society, and the reality that the stigma in the next 20 years, if the stigma continues to exist, they've predicted around 400,000 people will die from the stigma alone. Not the virus itself, but from the stigma alone.
In Formula 1, Andrea Stella has confirmed McLaren are considering Red Bull as their new engine supplier. With major changes to the sports regulations coming in 2026, Stella said they have to consider all options. That's all from us. I hope you enjoy our coverage of breaking news today. Remember, you can keep up to date on our website, solentjournalism.co.uk. Goodbye.